and welcome to the second session of R for Analytics and Data Science. So we talked about a number of things yesterday, and we also had a kind of a quick introduction, but an introduction to dplyr into the grammar of data manipulation. So I have a couple of questions for you as we get started. What is the verb that you would use if you were interested in picking out observations in a data frame by their value? So just to remind you, let's say if I wanted to find all the flights that left on January 1st, that's picking all the observations by their value. What's the name of that verb? What do you call that action, that thing that you're doing? Filter. That's it. Exactly. You're filtering out the data. All right. I want to get a sense of which flights were most delayed. So if there's like a delay column, how do I do that? What do I call that when I want to do that thing? Sort of put them in order by delay. What's that verb called? Yes, it's arrange, absolutely. Okay, let's say I have a ton of different columns. I don't want all of them. Really, all I just need is flight number and the delay and where they were going. I don't care about anything else. I want to save memory. I want to make it as simple as possible. What do I call that action when I only get those columns? What is that called? Yep, select. And I almost feel like I'm playing a game myself when I ask these questions because I so want to use the words because they're natural. It's like, what do you call it when you select only? Oh, I gave you the answer. So yes, it's called select. All right. So let's go back to that delay question. I want to get everything in order by the amount of delay, but let's say that I only have a column which is scheduled departure and then actual departure. And what I want to do is I want to create a new column, which is like actual minus, actual departure versus planned minus planned departure. What do I call that when I take two columns or multiple columns or do math on a column and create a new column? What's that called? Yes, that's called mutate. That's called mutate. Fantastic. Okay. I want to just get the average flight delay for the entire year, just the average flight delay, a departure delay. What do I call that when I just take all the numbers and come up with a single number? Summarize. Very, very good. All right. Getting the mean, the average of all the delays isn't that interesting. What I'm really interested in is which airlines are worst. So what would I do? What's the verb called when I want to rearrange the data a little bit? So it's not arrange, but I want to put them together. So all the airlines are together and they get calculated together. So I get a mean delay by airline, let's say. What do I call that? Absolutely right, Aaron. That's group by. Yep. Okay. Absolutely. It's group by. Group by is one of those things. We're going to see it in just a moment. It doesn't make the data look any different, but it's doing a trick that we do all the time in R, which is adding a little bit of metadata to the data structure, which lets functions know when they operate on it that they have to keep this thing in mind. So it modifies how the summarize works. It also modifies how the mutate works if you have a group by there. But it's one of those things you have to be a little bit careful because this is one of those cases where it's a little bit invisible, and that group by is in force until you do something that takes it away. And you take it away by saying ungroup, or you take it away by doing summarize. But we're going to be seeing that in just a moment. Okay, all very cool verbs. What do all of these verbs have in common? I said that they were kind of alike. What are the three things that we talked about yesterday that they have in common? What do all the dplyr verbs or functions have in common? Let me ask for a little bit of help. So Jessica, what is every verb expecting to be given? What does every verb work on?
I didn't go to the previous session, so I don't know.
No, that's fine. And what's so funny was trying to pick up names to make sure I didn't pick anybody who wasn't there before, but I got it quite wrong. Renton, what do these verbs expect? What are you supposed to give these verbs to work on? Do you remember?
Let's see. I don't remember.
That's okay. And it's one of these things where I can't even give you a good hint because otherwise I give the entire thing. Miguel, do you know what these verbs expect to be given? What do they work on?
Argument?
Yes, but what's the first thing they expect and what are they operating on?
Oh, well, it's in the chat there. So they're operating on a data frame.
Yes, exactly. And Laura, you were almost there. Data set, you're right, but it's a particular name. It's called a data frame. So it expects a data frame. Okay, this one's a little bit easier. What do these verbs return?
Oh boy.
Yeah, so they take a data frame and then they return.
A data frame.
That's it. Exactly. Very, very good. A new, oh, and that's very good, Zoe. Fantastic. A new data frame. That's right. Exactly. Do they change the original data frame? No, they don't. As a matter of fact, this practice is something this has the property what's called immutability. These are pure functional approaches, and that's a form of programming. And what they don't do is to change the thing that they were given. Instead, they return a new one that is unchanged. And it makes some things much, much simpler to do. And then the answer so what do they have in common? They take a data frame, they return a data frame, and they also take parameters. Miguel, you mentioned this, parameters which tell it exactly what you're supposed to be doing with this. And they take a little bit more than parameters. As a matter of fact, they can even take other helper functions as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to sort of go through a number of exercises on how to apply these. We're going to talk about them each in brief because one of the take-home assignments was to do some reading. But don't worry, we're going to be in breakout rooms. So even if you weren't here and didn't do the background reading, you'll have other people who probably did. And even if you didn't do that, you can always cheat and look up the answers in the solutions, because you'll notice that in here we have data transform, where I have all the questions and everything, and then we have data transform answers. So go ahead and peek if you can't figure it out when you're in the breakout rooms. Everyone ready? All right, let's do this. Oh, I had one more question I was going to ask you. I keep on talking about the grammar of data manipulation, and I've already talked about verbs. How do I make a sentence out of this? How do I make a sentence out of all of these verbs and things that I'm acting on? It is the pipe. It is that weird percent greater than percent. It's called the pipe. And what it does is it takes a data frame and gives that data frame to the next verb as its first argument. That's really what it's doing. behind the scenes, but you can think of it as taking a data frame and then moving to the next step. It's okay to think about it in those terms. This is such a successful approach and leads to such improved readability that, and this was originally from a package called Magritte. Anybody know the artist René Magritte? And what one of his most famous paintings is? He was a surrealist. And one of his most famous paintings is of what something is clearly a pipe. It's clearly a pipe. And then underneath it says, Il ne s'est pas une pipe. This is not a pipe. So that's one of his most famous things. And so the package is called Magritte R for René Magritte or Magritte R, whichever. And it was so popular, and tidyverse has had such an influence that now there's been a pipe operator that's been added to base R as of 4.0. So now there's a pipe operator in 4.0 in the base. So you're going to find people using it all the time now, even when they're base R purists. I don't need no stinking tidyverse. Well, pipe operator made it in there. Great. And you're quite right, Adrian. He's right. It is not a pipe. It is a painting of a pipe. All right. Let's go ahead and open up our R Studio. And I'm going to go ahead and share my R Studio. Let me know if this is too small. I'm gonna grab a larger chunk of my screen, but I can zoom in if I need to. There we go. Let me adjust you a little bit. Can everyone see that well enough? Let me know if I need to make that bigger. All right, remember to prepend your name. So I'm going to be depending on that. Okay, excellent. I'm going to be depending on that to do the breakout rooms in just a few minutes. Let's go ahead and talk about verbs. I'm going to scoot all the way to the top here. Remember that all of this, you can find all of this in R for Data Science. So just do a Google search for R for DS. You'll find this. That is a book on R for Data Science. It covers all of this material. A lot of this is verbatim. I've changed a few things. When you load this up, you'll want to run this code chunk. And remember, all of this is text, but RStudio knows to handle this separately because I have tilde, tilde, tilde. And then this information, and that followed by tilde, tilde, tilde. No, not tilde, backtick, backtick, backtick. And that lets RStudio know that this needs to be handled specially. It's a code chunk. And now I've loaded up my library in NYC Flights, and I've loaded up tidyverse. Recall that Flights has a ton of data in here. It's all flights that left New York City in 2013. Remember, I'm going to do a hacky thing here because normally we should see everything that we're working on over here. But R allows you to create different namespaces. And so actually the flights information is not sitting in here. It's not sitting in the global environment. Instead, it's sitting in, it's sort of tucked away. Where is flights? I thought I'm doing my blind, not seeing the thing. NYC Flights, there we go. So it's sitting in there. But I actually want to move it up to the global environment. So I'm going to do this thing where I'm just going to say, hey, I'm going to assign flights, assign that flights. And this means taking flights, which is down in NYC Flights, and just moving up to the global environment. So I'm going to run that using Control Enter. Now I can see it up here. Okay, continuing down here, we talked last time about doing filtering. Remember, if I want to get all the flights for January 1st, I simply say, I want to filter the flights where the month is 1 and the day is 1. If I run that, then I get all the flights which left January 1st. Okay. You recall I also introduced the this statement as well. And remember, this is the pipe, the Magritte R pipe, and you read it like this. Starting with flights, I want to filter all flights that had month 1 and day 1. And I then want to only select the columns month, day, departure time, flight, and destination. So that's how you read it. Left to right, top to bottom, and you should actually be able to read it like a sentence. Okay, here's another one where I want to get all the flights which left in February and put them in order by departure time. Great. All the flights that have the month of 2, which is February, then arrange by departure time. Right now, what I want to do is let me change this a little bit. I want to list only the flights for December 12th, then arrange by arrival time, then keep only the columns with flight number and departure time. Okay, I'm going to give you all just a moment to see if you can do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to take 60 seconds. See if you can do this. I'm going to ask people to share their code in just a moment. All right, that is 1 minute. So let's go ahead. Who can help me out here? What do I start with? Could start with the range, but I need to start, regardless, I need to start with something even before that. What's the very first thing that my sentence needs to have? What is my verb going to be? Yes, remember, I always have to start. It's going to be operating on a data frame. So let's start with the data frame. So the suggestion was flights. Yes, flights. Then, and you can do Control-Shift-M for the them, so you don't have to type all that stuff. Control-Shift-M. Then, how do I get only the flights for December 12th? What's the verb? Filter, okay. Thank you. And how do I write the filter statement? If I want December 12th, what do I need to say? Month. Yes. Month is, and I want, yes, I want month is 12. And remember, I've got to use the 2 equal signs because the single equal sign means is assigned. And that's not it. This is a test. 2 equal sign is a test saying month is 12. Is month 12? Yes or no? Is month the 12? Yes or no? And where the day is the 12th as well. So only return these things where this is true. Okay. Then what do I do? What's the verb? Somebody already said it. Arrange. How do I arrange by arrival time? How do I arrange by arrival time? Yes, okay, great. Thank you so much, Noah. So arrange, so it's arrival time. And notice the hints that it has up here for me. So this is really helpful. Arrange by arrival time. Great. And then finally, then what's the verb where I only want to keep certain columns? Select. Thank you, Mafe. And I only want to have flight. Yep, I want to have the flight, and then I want to have departure time. How does it know what the, and you notice that these are sort of in purple. It's actually guessing that I mean to be typing one of the fields in the data frame. The reason that it knows what data frame I'm talking about is that it's red here. It knows that I'm operating, I'm doing something on flights. So when you write in this way, another advantage is because you're telling it up front what you're starting with, it can do this nice autocomplete for you, and it makes things much simpler. Run it with Control-Shift-Enter, and voila, we got what we needed. All right. So I'm going to touch on this just a little bit. Logical operators, what is happening with flight is that flight is choosing all those columns. Let's take a look at this. It's choosing all these columns where this evaluates to true. No, not columns, rows. Pardon me. Rows. This is data. Data goes in rows. So it's checking a flight. For this particular flight on this particular row, is the month 12, true or false? Is the day 12, true or false? The comma means that both need to be true. I want month is 12 and day is equal to 12. I can use any sort of logical operators there that I want, and I can make a statement out of it. All that it's interested in is, does it evaluate to true? If so, keep that particular column. So there's really nice ways to do this. Let's go ahead and I want to find all flights that departed in November or December. Okay, and Adrian, we'll catch you in some breakout rooms. Make sure that you've run all of the libraries so everything is loaded, because you have to have tidyverse loaded at the top before things will run. So library tidyverse. Okay, so we're going to start with flights. Then I want all flights that departed in November or December. So I could do filter, I could do filter. And then I could say month is that, and I could say or, so that type character is actually an or. Month is equal to 12. So let's go and just, I'm going to pop this out, and we can sort of make it really big. And we're just going to jump to the end, and it looks like although I think I wrote that wrong. I did write that wrong, because I've got to let it know that I meant two different statements here. Let's see, I certainly hope that this is going to run. I am just, it's correct. Oh, thank goodness. Okay, great. Yeah, I thought that was supposed to be correct. So it's not able to show because I had too many flights. So, if I want to see all of the, if I want to see all see if there are any 12s, I could arrange by month. oh, except I need to spell it right. Arrange by month. Oh, but it's showing it in increasing. I want to have it in decreasing. Help me out here. How can I figure out how to put it into decreasing order? Where might I go to sort of learn about this? Where's one place I know I can go to learn about tidyverse and everything tidyverse? Yeah. So one way is that I can go to tidyverse.org. Absolutely. Here, I'm going to pull up a web browser right here. I can always go to tidyverse.org. And here's dplyr. So I can click on dplyr and then I can sort of read about it here. I'm having a problem with arrange. Notice that is clickable. So I'm clicking on arrange. And then it tells me all about it here. Arguments, and it has by group, and then it has details here. And it gives me a really nice rundown of all the different things that I can do. Oh, wait a minute, look at this. Arrange DESC. And that's clickable too. I'm going to click on it. Descending order. So this is a modifier. This is like a helper function, and it says, take whatever this thing is and do it in reverse order. Okay, let's try that. So I want to have months in descending order. There we go. Excellent. So yeah, it was in there. I just couldn't see them because there were so many of them. It stopped at 100 at 100 pages. Too many to show. Excellent. So this says take flights, filter any case where the month is 11 or the month is 12, then arrange by month in descending order. And yeah, minus also is can work as well. But keep in mind, I have to make sure that that works for strings. It'll definitely, I don't use that one that frequently. Make sure that it works on non-numerics. Okay. You can do a lot of things with logicals, and you can read up on this on your own. The one other alternative way of doing this that I'd like to show you is the following. So let's say I want all flights that leave in let's say January, let's say January for March, May, and maybe June. All right. This is going to start looking clunky. I have to say month. I have to say month is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4 times. That's going to be a long statement. Isn't there a simpler way to do it? Yes. If there's something which is too long or seems a little bit complex, there's probably a simpler way to do it. Again, I start with flights. Then, remember Control-Shift-M will give you then. Filter. And month. Okay. Now remember, I have to give this statement, whatever the statement is, needs to evaluate to true or false. Any statement that evaluates to true or false here is good to go. So it turns out there's a special statement, and it's mentioned down here, that's called in. And so it's looking for the instance of this number in some kind of a vector. So it's looking for something in a vector. So we're going to cover 2 things here. So this is going to be percent in percent. I think in is kind of ugly. Percent in percent. It's base R. This is why it's kind of ugly. And it is what it is. But this means if this month is within this vector, then evaluate to true. And so that's what we're going to be using here. So the code that we're going to write is, oh, come on, where's my cursor? I want to create a vector. The way I create a vector in R is I just do C, left paren, right paren, and that gives me a vector. So what does my vector need to be? What is the month for January? It's 1 or 3 or 5 or 6. So give me all the flights where the month is somewhere in 1, 3, 5, or 6. I run that and it works. So in. Questions about in or questions about filtering?
Can you scroll back up to that?
I can. All right. Let's go ahead. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna touch on a few more verbs, make sure we got them, and then we're gonna do breakout rooms. We're gonna do a little bit more complex, okay? So we have filter. There are certainly more things to be learning about filters. I'm gonna skip over NAs right now. This is a really important section though, so I do want you to read this either here or in the book. But let's go and talk a little bit about, we've covered a range now. Let's talk about mutate. So we're going to use mutate just like we used all the other verbs. We're going to say, start with the data that we're working with. So it's flights. Then we're going to be doing a mutate because they all look the same. Now, let's think through what we need here. What does mutate do? How does it give how does it add on to or modify the data frame that it returns to? It's doing some calculations on other columns in the data frame, and then it finds a result. Where does it put that result? Well, what does every verb return? It takes a data frame and it returns. Yep, Laura, you're right. A data frame. Yeah, you're on mute, but I saw your lips move. So it takes a data frame, it returns a data frame. So where do you suppose it puts the answer? Miguel, what do you think? Where do you suppose it puts the answer to its calculation?
I think in this case, if you're not assigning it to a new data frame, it just goes in it just returns it, and then it goes away after you mutate it.
Yes. So you're gonna get a whole new data frame back, right?
With a new column.
It's going to be identical. Lori, go ahead.
Sorry, does it just create a new column with the mutation?
Yes, that's it. It creates a new column, so the data frame you get back is increased by the number of columns that you created with the mutate. So that's it exactly, and that's how it gives it back to you. And Miguel, you're right too, in that if we don't save this thing, that data is just going to get lost. So we better cover that too. So let's say that I don't want to do it right here. Let's say that I would like to calculate speed of the air, average speed. For the flight. Okay, how might I Oh, and quick question here, Laura, you had a question of why did we use C? C is actually a function itself, and it takes whatever is in the parentheses and turns it into a vector. So that's really what it's doing. You can read it as the vector. So we use it in R all the time, and it simply takes whatever you give it and creates a vector of that with those things. And to get a little bit more into it, you gave it only numbers. Vectors can only be one thing. So you give it all numbers, and so it's a numeric vector. If you gave it strings, it would be a string vector. So it's sensitive to the things that you put into it, but it's a vector constructor.
Okay, and then it's necessary for using the within function, or?
Yeah, because in takes two vectors actually. So it's taking a vector that in this case was all the months for all of the data frame, right? And saying, okay, sort of looping through that, if you will, was 12 in this vector, yes or no? And so it returns all bunch of yeses or nos is what's happening behind this.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. All right, help me out here. Remember that you can see what the columns are here. What calculation should I use if I want to figure out what the average speed was for a particular flight? How do you calculate speed? And I'll just leave my cursor sitting here suggestively. Yes, exactly. So what we need is we need the time. So it's distance divided by time. By the way, if you ever sort of forget that, you know, when you talk about miles per hour, right? Per means divide. So it literally is miles divided by hour. So it's distance divided by time. So I know the calculation is going to be air time. Yep, here it is, air time divided by distance. Excellent. But I've got to tell it which column to put this in. So that means we have to name the column. So shall we call this speed? We can call it speed. Single equal sign. Remember, the single equal sign means is defined as or is assigned. Oh, yeah, miles per hour. I carefully took us through that and I got completely wrong. See, that's why I need to remember that. Miles per hour, distance divided by time. Airtime. Excellent. Thank you. All right. So how do I read this? Start with flights, then I mutate and create a column speed defined as distance divided by airtime. Okay. Then let's say I want to only keep the columns. I want to select flight and distance and airtime and speed. And then let's say I want to find the fastest flights. What verb am I going to use to get the fastest flights? How do I put the fastest flights on the top? Arrange. Okay. And I want the fastest on the top. So speed, is that going to give me the fastest on the top? No, I got to flip it, right? So I want I want to go in the other direction. So I want this. Okay, great. Let's run it. These must be minutes. So gosh, I guess I need to do my homework and figure out what these units are. These look like miles. These are definitely not hours. But so I might need to do an additional mutate and come up with an airtime in hours. That's fine. I can figure that out another time. All right. There are a number of supporting helper functions that go with mutate. Mutate is where you're going to be doing a lot of your work, because a lot of the times you're concerned about creating additional columns, doing some calculations, things along those lines. So there's a lot going on with mutate. As a matter of fact, if we go and take a look at dplyr again, and we click on mutate, you see that so already there are you're going to find a lot of helper functions in here that do some pretty complex things. You don't have to learn everything at once. You can learn things a little bit at a time, but know that for mutate in particular, you can use all the other functions that you would use in R. You can write your own functions and apply them here using a mutate. And often that's what happens. You write a function and then you use it here in mutate, or you do calculations directly in here. Questions about mutate? All right. Then let's do summarize. Remember before, so we have summarize. Let's say my problem that I'd like to solve right now is, what is the average delay by airline? What are the worst airlines for delays? Okay. And what do I need to, and remember, we do a Control Shift M, oh, I'm sorry. No, we do Control Alt I or Control Command I to do a new code chunk. What do I start with? Flights. Then what do I need to do first? I want to have these collected. I want to do this operation on airlines. So it's going to be group by. That's right. So I'm going to do a group by airlines. No, flights. What is that? I don't remember exactly what it's called. It's not airline. Here's this thing called carrier. And that is actually what it is. So it's going to be carrier. Then what's the verb I use to sort of collapse things down, get a single number out? In this case, I'm going to be taking an average. What's that verb called? Summarize. Excellent. Notice you can spell it either, the American way or the way that you would in New Zealand, because that's where Hadley is from. Hadley Wickham, who first started to create the tidyverse. So we're going to summarize. Okay, help me think through this. What does every verb take? What does every verb expect? You got to give every verb a data frame. Yeah, not just data, but a data frame. What does every verb return? A data frame. That's it. This data frame that it's going to return is going to look a lot different, right? Because we're sort of collapsing it down. It's going to return a data frame. So it's going to, we want it to take the average of all the flight times. I'm sorry, of all the delays. So it's going to do something that kind of looks like a mutate, but then it's going to collapse it down. So first of all, we have to name what that average delay is, and we need to name it because that's going to have to be a column in the resultant data frame. So let's call it average delay. And this is going to be defined as the average, we can say mean, that's a base function of, and what's the delay? Let's do departure delay. Departure delay. We look up here, we see it's called departure delay. So we do departure delay. So let's say I have 20 different carriers. How many values should I end up with for this average delay? 20. One for each carrier. Exactly. So how many rows is my resultant data frame going to have? Oh, and Dennis, you already answered it. 20. Yeah. So this data frame I'm getting back is going to look a lot different. It's going to have 20 different rows. How many columns is it going to have? So I'm taking the average of departure delay. I'm only going to have 20. Yeah, 2 of them. It's got to say carrier. It's got to tell me which carrier it's talking about. And then it's going to return the average delay, but that's all it's going to return. It wouldn't make sense for it to return anything else. Think about all the different things that you have. Let's say you have scheduled departure time. Well, you've already collapsed down all the flights for a particular carrier. You didn't tell it what you wanted to do with departure time, so it can't include it. So the data frame that you get out of a summarize is going to be much smaller than the data frame you put into it. Okay, let's go ahead and run it. I'm so excited. We're going to run this. And I'm going to do Control-Shift-Enter to run everything. I only got a single number out. I got a bunch of these NA things. Anybody know what NA stands for? What does NA stand for, do you mean? Just not available? Yeah. NA. So here's the deal. Apparently there's some NAs. There are some missing. NA means missing. There are some delays that have not been calculated. They're left out for some reason. And this is a huge data set, so it's not unusual that would happen. So let's think about why it might return NA and why that is the correct thing to do unless you choose otherwise. You're gonna have to do some math for me, okay? I want you to give me the average of the following 3 numbers. So you got your pencils ready? Okay. The 3 numbers are 1, 3, and NA. What is the average of 1, 3, and NA? Yeah. The correct answer is, what are you talking about? What am I supposed to do with NA? NA means it could be anything. It's missing. It could be a billion, in which case the answer is, oh, about a billion, you know, or it could be negative a billion, in which case the answer is negative a billion. Or it could be, if it's, you know, 2, then the answer is, guess what, 2. Right, so without specifying what you're supposed to do with the NA, you can't answer. Okay, I want you to get your calculators out, you know, whatever you need to do. I have the task for you again. what is the average of 1, 3, and NA? Oh, and by the way, just if there are any NAs and what I just told you, just ignore them, drop them. Now what is the average? So after intense calculation, you can say the answer is 2. Yes, exactly, because I told you what to do with the NAs. That's what we need to do here. So we need to tell mean, and that's who we need to communicate with. We don't need to communicate with summarize. Summarize doesn't care. Summarize taking whatever you're giving it and returning, right? Mean needs to be told, by the way, ignore any missing values. And that is exactly what Dennis and Miguel were mentioning before. The way you do that, and this again, it's a little ugly because it's base R, you say NA.RM is defined as true. And what that means is that mean function has a parameter called NA.RN, which means, what do you want me to do with, if there are NAs, what do you want me to do? NA.RN means remove them if you find them. So now let's run it again. Much better. I'm still not quite done. How do I put it in reverse order so I can get the worst ones?
Yeah, just say select, yeah.
Gotta say, and I remember I gotta arrange it. So I wanna get the worst ones. So I do arrange and I do descending of my new column, average delay. Now look at what it did. It's doing an autocomplete. So I just started to type average and it does the autocomplete for me, which means it is able to take what I've done up here. It's essentially reading and following along what I've been doing. So it knows that my new data frame that I have here only has 2 columns and one of them is average delay. And if I want to do descending, I can. Now let's run it again. Oh, what did I do? Average delay. Flights. Did I balance that out? Yes, I balanced that out. Then I did arrange.
You have desk twice.
I do. What am I doing? Going crazy here. All right, excellent. There we go. I don't know what airline F9 is. Don't fly it. They have the worst average delay. Excellent. It is Frontier. Okay, great. So now, these are going to provide some really powerful tools. Let's go ahead and try a quick exercise here. And here I'm going to put in chat. Well, I'll type it here first. I'd like to go into Breakout Rooms. So in Breakout Room, let's say that we want to find calculate the and so I just want to do the average arrival delay. Okay. And then do the same thing by carrier. Actually, let's do a little bit different. Let's do by destination. And then find the worst destinations for delays. Okay, that's going to be one. So I'm going to ask you to do some of that work. And then the second one is going to be do the same as above, but do it by destination and airline. Okay. this. Let me put this into chat. We're going to go into breakout rooms. So we just want to figure out first, what is the worst destination for departure delays, average departure delay, and which ones are worse by destination and airline. Okay. All right, let me go ahead and create breakout rooms.
Yeah, we're going by the, aren't we going by the abbreviations that we put next to our names?
Yes, we are. Oh, and definitely put your abbreviation in your name. And yeah, I'll use those as sort of a guide, but we might mix people up a little bit too. All right, so okay. And I'm mixing them all just up a little bit here. Give me just another moment. All right. And I'm going to make it in so you can return to the main session at any time. I'm going to automatically move you into the breakout rooms. I'm going to set this breakout room for 5 minutes. And then you'll get a 30-second countdown after that. If you get done beforehand, go ahead and come back in. I'm going to open all rooms now. See you all in just a few minutes. And I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording. Zoom recording. All right, welcome back from the breakout room. Help me think through this. What do I always start with? What are we operating on?
Filters.
You start with the data frame. You're always operating on a data frame. Yep. So we give the name of the data frame flights. Then we want to calculate average arrival by destination. By. That's the key word that lets us know that we first need to do a group by. Okay, so what I type here? Group by what? What's the destination? How do I find that? Oh, over here. Destination. So group by dest. Excellent. Then, actually, you know, let's just take a look at just this part, because you can always do this and execute just a little bit at a time. So, and here's a nice trick. An old friend used to do this all the time. You highlight what you want to execute. You do a Control Enter and executes just that little part. So this thing is 336,776 by 19. If I run the entire thing, it is still 336,776 by 19. So again, it's returning almost exactly the same data frame, except that it has some metadata in it, which says, hey, any operations you do on me, do a group by first. To do those operations grouped by. So that's what group by is giving you. Then what do I need to do? What's the verb? How do I sort of collapse down and, I have to say the word. How do I collapse down? How do I summarize what I've, you know, what my, by group? Summarize, right? So I do summarize, and I'll spell it the American way. Okay, I've got to name the column where I'm going to be putting this result. And I want average delay by destination. So I could do average delay by destination. I could do that. A little bit ugly, but that's going to be defined as the mean of arrival delay. I know departure delay. We're doing departure delay. Okay. Well, will that do it? Do I need to add any more code here? Anything else I need to tell the function mean? Yeah, I've got to tell it what to do with the NAs. Otherwise, it's going to say, what are you saying? I'm going to return an NA. So I'm going to say, by the way, mean, you know those NAs? Yeah, go ahead and remove them. All right. Quick question. I'm going to run this. By looking at this, can you tell me how many destinations there are in this whole data set? How many destinations are there? Yeah, there are 105 destinations, because when you say group by and summarize, it collapses it down one destination per row. Great, so here's the code for that one. I'm going to be a little bit lazy. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it down here. I want to do this exactly the same thing, but I want to do destination and I want to do airline. How do I do that? Yep, all I've got to do is say, oh yeah, by the way, and by carrier. All right. Before I run this, what is going to be the shape of my resultant data frame and why? You have all the information that you need in order to tell me, or to make a pretty good, well, no. Let me put it this way. What is the largest size that I can expect?
I believe the largest you could expect to be the number of destinations multiplied by the number of carriers.
That's it, exactly. So it's going to be 20 times 105. Under what assumption would I get that many back, Miguel, just to push a little bit further?
If every carrier flew to every single destination, which is probably unlikely.
Which is right, exactly. Exactly. So it's going to collapse it down by carrier and destination. That's a multiply in terms of the dimensions. So let's go ahead and run it and let's see what we get. So 314. So from 2000 to 314. So yeah, there's some destinations where very few carriers go. Excellent. Oh, I'm not quite, oh, I need to do my arrange here, don't I? Let's go do my arrange, then.
I think that's exactly what I put. That's exactly what I was saying.
Oh, thank you very much. Perfect. So, and I want descending, and then I want by average delay of destination. Oh, what did I do wrong this time? Oh, because I can't spell.
Spelling always counts for each code you make here. That goes for all the coding procedures.
That's right. Computer will do a lot for you, but you must be precise.
Yep.
Okay, so it looks like, I think that's St. I have no idea if that's St. Louis, or I'm gonna have to look that up. Great. That's a lot of delays of UA going into STL. All right, excellent. We cheated a little bit. We cheated in that we got our flights data in here by simply referring to it. So we loaded NYC flights. What I'd like to do is to take some time to show you how to read in data. And this is actually really important. because this is best practices for reading in data. So we cheated when we started. Let's show how you can really read the information in. I'm going to create a code chunk here. Control Alt I or Control Command I. I want to have code because I want to be able to reproducibly read my data in. It is not reproducible if you do stuff only through a GUI and then it magically appears. So in the work that you do and that you're sharing with your collaborators and with the future you and with people in the future, you don't want any step to say, and then a miracle occurs. So you don't want it to be, and the data appeared. Instead, you want to have code that shows exactly how the data was read in, what assumptions you made, what decisions you made about reading in the data. So this is a little bit of a two-step. Because on the one hand, it's really handy to be able to use a GUI to do a preliminary look at the data, make sure that everything is correct, and then read it in. So what we're going to do is we're going to use an RStudio GUI, graphical user interface, to inspect the data, figure out and make the decisions about reading it in. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say, don't do it, but give me the code that would have done it. And then I'm going to paste that code in right here. So let's do this. I want to pull in flights, and I also want to pull in another data set as well. Okay. So in environment up here, you see import. And I'm going to be reading data from text, but hey, look, you can read from Excel, SPSS, SAS, Stata. There are routines, there are packages to read from all sorts of different sources. So I'm going to use read R, part of the tidyverse. And so it's asking me, where is your data? Well, let me do a browse. My data is going to be under my subdirectory called data. Click on data, open it up. So I have a couple of different things here. I have airports. Let's say I want to read in flights. I want to read in flights, and then what I'd really like to do is I want to read in airports later because I'd like to know what those destinations are. So I'm going to read in flights. I'm going to say okay. Look down here. See the code preview? It's writing the code that results from the decisions that I make up here. So what could possibly go wrong here? Why don't I just go ahead and just say, hey, import all the data? Well, some of this isn't right, like year. Should year be a numeric or should it be a string? Well, depends on how you're going to use it. The question you need to ask yourself, because if something is numbers, it's going to by default reading it as a numeric. In this case, double means that it's reading it as a float. Are you going to do math on it? So are you ever with this data going to be looking at that and taking the average? If the answer is yes, then you read it in as a numeric. If the answer is no, then you read it in as a string, as character. So let's say that we had zip code. Does it ever make sense to say, what is the average zip code? Right, that does not make sense. So no, zip code, even though it looks like a number, the 5-digit zip code, ought to be read in as character. But the math, it really depends. I think we're going to keep it as numeric because we might be doing math on it. If we had multiple years, we might say, what is the latest year that this defunct airline flew? Or what was the earliest year that this airline flew out of this particular city? In which case, min, max, all of that makes sense. So yeah, we might actually do some math on this. So we're going to keep that numeric, month, day, We might do math on that. What is the latest in February? You know, all those things. Departure time. It's kind of a weird format. Instead of year, instead of hour, minutes, it's all put together, but there are other exercises about that. Departure delay, scheduled arrival delay, carrier, flight. Flight number. Should this be character or should this be numeric? And why? Character. Why, Miguel? And you can speak it. Yeah, you don't want to modify, or you don't want to ever do math on it, right? Yeah. So you don't ever want to do it
and summarize it.
Yeah. And sort of that's the intuitive. The definition is this is not a measure. It is nominal. It is by name only. Flights, you know, flight 633. Does that mean it's flight 633? Is that better than flight 600? No. You know, does it come later? No. Okay. So this needs to be character. So click on this drop down and we change it to character. What I want you to look is down here where the code preview is. I'm going to say character. It reads the data in. Sadly, kind of pops me over to the left again, so not to get over here, but now it says character. See what it says here? So it's flights is assigned read CSV of where you pointed it to, and now it has this thing called column types. Column types are defined as calls flight, which is defined as column character. So what this is saying is, hey, for that column flight, be sure to read it in as a character. So it's changing the code for you. Let's check and make sure that there are no other changes that we need to make. Airtime, distance, we're going to do math on all that. All looks good. Notice that time hour is called a double. It's a little bit screwy. This is actually a date time. It's a special format. It's seeing it as a double because it's doing just a quick preview, but it's showing it correctly. So we're good. Let's go down here. Do you want to call flights flights? Yes, I do. So I'm going to keep this as the name of the data frame. The first row is names. Yes, it is, because I know that we have the column headers here. Trim spaces everywhere, sure. This thing called Open Data Viewer, where it's going to give the command view flights. I'll show you what that does, but we'll leave it in there for right now. But often I will unclick that because I don't want that. But I'll leave it in there for right now. I so much want to click import. If I click import, then I'm all done. It reads in the data, but it leaves no trace. If I click import, then the GUI, the graphical user interface, takes care of everything for me. And then what my code looks like is it was magically done. I don't want that. Instead, what I want to do is I want to copy and paste all this code. So I could select all this and then copy it, or I can click even right here. This is that notebook copy. And then, just as a double check, I'm going to say cancel. Nothing has been read in, nothing has happened at all. What I do here is then I paste this code, Control-Shift-V, into a code chunk. And now it loads my library, it defines my variable. I'm gonna rename this. I'm gonna call this flights CSV, just to, because we already have flights in here. This one have flights CSV, just so it's clear. And then it's going to do whatever this view flights is. Now I have a trail. Did I make any decisions? Yes, I read in the flight as a character. All right, now I'm going to run it. Look what it did. Okay, so here I have flights up here, flight CSV. Looks identical. Let's check and see if it is identical. So flight is an int on this one. Flights in mine.
It should be character and your flights. Yeah.
So in mine, I read it in as character. In the built-in one, it's an int. Look at this here. So I was happily editing here, but then it opened up this new window. So in addition to being a text editor up here, this is also a data previewer. And the data previewer is triggered by calling the function capital V, view, and then the data frame that you want to visualize. And it gives you something which is nice, because here you can do things like you can sort. So I can say I can sort by day. And this is kind of a big data frame, so it might take just a moment. Probably shouldn't have done that. Oh well, it'll be done in a moment. I can filter. So I can do all sorts of things with this. Okay. But often I don't want that behavior, so I'm just going to take that out. So now I have a breadcrumb, and I can see exactly how to do this. All right, hey, I want to read in flights. That was great, but I also want to read in. I want to read in carrier or destinations. So two things. I want to read in destinations, in other words, the airports, and I also want to read in what the carriers stand for. So what I'd like for you to do is to figure out how to read those two in. We're going to do another breakout room. We're going to do 5 minutes for this, and when you come back, I'd like to have that code to read both of those in. All right. We're going to go to the same breakout rooms. We're also going to do it for 5 minutes. And code to read these in. I'm going to open all rooms now. I think I'm going to do join. I'm going to introduce relational data because a lot of people will need that, but I'm just going to leave visualization for
another day.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, because they can read it, they can do it.
Exactly.
I might, if I have time, which I may not, I may just give a few words to sort of frame the thinking about ggplot and then sort of leave it at that.
That's a good idea.
Okay. This is good to keep in mind, though. Really, if you have a group that doesn't have any programming, we really need 3 sessions of this, or we need to go 2 4-hour sessions. We tried to collapse it down, but there's only so much you can collapse it down. Okay, good. How are you doing?
I'm just hanging in there. I'm basically just working on the Python workshop for next week, getting them together. So I think they're going to be ready. It's going to be a lot like the PTY. Oh, we're still recording. It's going to be just like the PTY.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. And with Preston there to do, that's going to be terrific.
Oh, and there he is.
And there's Preston.
Yeah, my group just had a quick question on where exactly to get the file.
It's under data.
It's just in the data folder. Yep.
It's all in the data
And then
folder. And if they're unsure about which ones to go after, remind them that they can look for the NYC flights package. And that has a description there. So you can search for that.
okay. And then of the 4 in the data folder, they didn't know which one to take. And I
Yes, exactly. And that's where looking up NYC flights there will help quite a bit.
okay. Hop back in that then.
Excellent.
Breakout rooms.
I'm looking forward to not really a week off, but it's a week off from workshops next week for me. And I'll be there, but I'm not teaching or some of that data. Aiden, you told me this just a moment ago. What did you have to use? The other function?
So we used I think it was still readr. So yeah, we used read CSV, but for XLS.
Okay. And sometimes the package is completely different. Like if you're trying to read Stata, it would be Hagen. So This front end is in front of a number of different packages, but it actually gives you a common front end, even though they're totally different packages doing this reading. Can somebody put into chat the code that you had for reading in those tables? Who has some code that you tried out? Let me go and ask then. Let's see, Lori, or Aiden, actually. Aiden, do you have a code that you can share?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. Just paste it into chat and then I'll. Excellent, thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead and put this over here. And we're gonna put this right below here. You gave me pretty much everything. I'm gonna... All right, so this was... Oh, now did read CSV work with this? I didn't think that would work. All right. Oh, it's been updated. Okay, so it actually is reading in the CSV. That's fantastic. And then you left the view airports in there, so we could get rid of that. And so when we run this, then a new data frame shows up. So this read CSV doesn't take a data frame, right? Because it's producing one. So this is one of those violations. What you've got to give it actually is the name of where this data ought to be. And then it's going to return a data frame. Notice what it does here. It gives you the column specifications because it had to guess. The way it guesses is it looks ahead into the data, a couple of hundred into the data, looks to see if everything is a numeric, in which case it comes back with number, or if there's a character in there, or if it looks like a date or whatever, it'll try to parse that correctly and it will do it by guessing. If you want to make your code completely reproducible, you could go ahead and you could actually put that up in here, but we're not going to do that right now. But know that if you want to make it completely reproducible, you can do that. But this is just telling you what it chose. And we can look and see what the data looks like up here in airports. So it is the FAA name and it has the location and the altitude. That's kind of cool. A whole bunch of neat information. Okay, how about code to read in all of the airlines? Did anybody find that? Could someone paste some code in for me that tells me where all the airlines are? And Lori, would you happen to have code for reading in the all of...
I do not, but is that the second data set?
That is the second data set, yeah.
Oh,
Who
okay,
has
then
this? Yeah.
I can do it right now.
Oh, that's fine. Somebody else should have it too. Who else? Give a thumbs up if you got to that second data set and were able to read it in. Give me a thumbs up.
Where is the second data set? Is it the other one called airports?
Yeah, so we had airports, and then we also wanted to have carriers because I wanted to figure out what the carrier names were. Oh, I do have that one in there, don't I? Be hilarious if I don't. Carrier.
Well, you don't.
And I don't. So never mind, because it's not in there. Sorry about that. Okay, great. But I do have the airports in here. Remember up here when we had this code up here, all the way up here where we had the delays, the mean delay by the destination. I'm going to copy this code down here. So what I want to know is the following. I would like to have the average, and I'm going to change this a little bit. I want to have the average no, departure. I'll do departure. I'll keep it simple. Departure delay by airline or by carrier and by destination. Okay. You recall we solved that problem before, so that's this code right here. And I would like the full name of the destination in the data frame. Okay. So if we were to run this, then we get the destination carrier and average delay destination. That's what we got out of this. Is there a verb that we know right now that can solve this problem for us? I want to have the full name of the destination in here. Where are the full names of destinations? I'll leave my cursor sitting suggestively. In what data frame is the full name of destinations?
Pretty much in airports, no doubt. So I see when your cursor you're hovering down on, it's currently it's supposed to be organized as character right now. Is that right?
Yep, well, and actually, so I'm sitting here right on name, exactly. So this is the name, the full name of the airport. And, you know, it looks like destination. If we take a look at, let's go at, I'm going to click the name airports because I want to inspect this a little bit. So watch what happens when I click the name airport. Ooh, it does a view for me. So when I click the name airport, it does a view for me. And we can sort of take a look at all the FAA names here. These are the different airport names. So if I wanted to, for example, let me go and click this. Oh, now it's sorted by that. I'm going to click filter up here. I want to find, remember it was STL. I thought maybe it was St. Louis. It is. Lambert St. Louis International. So FAA is related to the flights information, which is that destination. The destination really is just that FAA indicator. So let's go back to the code. I need to have something so I can combine two different data frames. I want to take the flights data, which is right here. I want this flights data, but I want to sort of look up what the full name of that destination is over here in my airports. So those of you who know, have been exposed to some SQL, what do you call that operation? I want to take two different data frames and I want to put them together. Yes, that's called a join, which makes sense, right? I mean, so you're joining two data frames. This is called a multi-table verb, or in particular, it's a two-table verb. So I want to look up the name, I want to look up the destination in the FAA and then pull that name over. And that is called joining. And there are a bunch of different kinds of joins. Read up on this in the R for data science, because you'll want to read up on it so you can get a good understanding of it. So there are different kinds of joins. This particular kind of join, I'm just going to have to tell you, this is called a left join. And that means I'm going to take the data frame that I'm starting with, and I'm going to look up by destination, and I'm going to use this other data frame as a reference. And I'm going to say, hey, for the first one, STL, look it up, bring over and join together so I can actually see what the full name is. So let's see what the syntax looks like. Joins work just like other verbs. So what do they first take? What do they assume that you're going to be giving them? What do all verbs, dplyr verbs, and most tidyverse verbs expect? They expect you to give them a data frame. And what do they return? What do you suppose join is going to return? One data frame. And it's going to return a data frame that is a bit wider than the original data frame. So let's see how this works. So I'm going to say, then I want to do a left join. Let's take a look at the parameters here. Left join, by, null, copy. Where do I find a good description of what left join is and what it does and how it works? Where can I go? Yeah, tidyverse.org. It's a good place to go because it gives really good descriptions. So here's a little bit of a trick.
But of course, though, Jesse, if you just put like the first view that is in the function, you can it just shows you a highlighted brief summary and highlighted version of the function as well.
Exactly, that's right. So so as we were typing this, it also goes a long way. You can do, sort of a tab and it will start, entering in information for you. The reason I keep on pointing you all in particular to tidyverse is that it gives you a lot of context, sort of tells you stories about it. So it's a really good place, especially when you're first learning coding, to kind of go there. But absolutely, you can look it up in here too, and you'll learn more of those tips and tricks as you learn R a little bit more as well. But for now, let's go to tidyverse. But I want to look for a particular function within tidyverse, so I can type tidyverse and then join. So that's a good way to do a search. This works a lot better than trying to do R, by the way. So if I wanted to learn about just base R and join, I do R and then join. Well, it turns out the letter R appears all over the place on the internet. It is like the world's worst search term. So it's like impossible to say, well, I want to know R. So if you're really looking for R, you could do R stat. That's usually a trick that people have. But often what I'll do is I'll just say, hey, I'm just searching for tidyverse version of join, hit enter. Look, here it is. Join two tables together. Fantastic. This tells you the whole story, the different types of joins, the arguments. There's even a whole chapter on this in R for Data Science, and actually there's a whole 30. The very next chapter, the very next notebook in this notebook is about it as well. But we're going to jump ahead just a little bit because we're running out of time a little bit. So let's go ahead and see if we can figure out how to make this work. I want to do left join. I know that the first data frame is going to be flights. What's the other data frame I want to join to? What's the data frame I want to join to? So I want to get the airports. So yeah, I want to do airports. Yeah. So I'm going to do airports. Yes. Okay, so I've defined my X, that's the first one. I've defined my Y. X is just the data frame, flights. Y now by position is defined as airports. The next thing to define is by. A character vector of variables to join by. So this is telling join how to work. If I put nothing in here, it's going to try to guess the names and it's going to do a terrible job. You should never do what's called a natural join, which is, hey, join this one to this one and guess the names. Not reproducible. Bad idea. People do it all the time and it causes huge, huge problems. So you always want to define by, and this is where it gets a little bit weird. So let's go to the examples. I love the examples because that's where they get really into the nitty gritty. All of these examples are cases where the names are the same in the left and the right data frame. But notice in here, it's called, I'm interested in destination. And over here, it's called FAA. So I have the situation where I have to say, I want on the left side, I want destination matched to FAA. So let's see if I can find an example in here. Okay, use a named by if the joined variables have different names. So it says by, and then it has this weird construction. So it's going to take a vector, but it's going to be a weird kind of vector. It's going to look like this. What is the name in the left data frame? The first one. What is the name in the right data frame? The second one. Okay, let's see what this looks like. So I want to create a vector. This vector is going to have this weird shape. It's going to be, what is the column name in the left? So what is my airport called in this data frame here? What is the column header for this? It's dest, yes. And then what's it called on the right? FAA. So what it's going to do is it's going to look in the left data frame for dest. It's going to do a lookup in Excel speak. That's VLOOKUP. It's going to look up in this other table by FAA what the full name of the airport is. Let's go and run it. Let's see what we get out. So it's trying to join these two data frames together. Okay, so this was, remember up here, the data frame that we had up here just had destination carrier and average delay. Now look what it's done. It's put name in there. It's put long altitude, time zone, all that stuff. So it looked up STL, and then it included all the information from that row of data over the airport's data frame. It did a lookup for us. Now, I don't actually want to have all of these other things here. So I might do a select. I might do a select of just, I want destination. I want carrier. I want average delay. And I want name. No, but I don't want a name. I want to call it something. So let's call it destination name, which is going to be defined as name. Very, very handy, very, very powerful. This is called a left join. Sometimes people call it merge. In base R, it's called merge. You want to do it using the tidyverse approach. That's going to give you the best, the fastest solution. All right, what questions do you have about doing joins?
Yeah, well, the first time before I did the select, I think I got an error message that said object airport's not found. Anybody have it? on the end on that one.
Oh, actually, I will keep this. I'll keep this open here a little bit, and you can check in with the TAs and dive into it. And I can even stick. No, I can't stick around. But I'll make one of the TAs host, and you can keep this open and troubleshoot. Absolutely. All right. We've been throwing away all of our work. Right? Every time we create these data frames, we're just throwing them away. If I want to save this data frame, and let's say I want to call this data frame destination, I want to call this, like a destination delays. Okay. Does anybody remember how I take an object and I assign something to an object? It's from the very beginning yesterday. I want to have destination delay. How do I put the code in here to say, take everything that flights was and assign it to this name?
I think there may be a good answer in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Aaron, perfect. That's right. Greater than dash or the control. So I forgot what I always forget what that shortcut is. So this means gets, right? Destination delay gets the value of all of this. So it will run all of that code and then store it in destination delay. So let's go and see what happens over here. Okay, so we're going to see what happens when I run. Okay, so now when I run, nothing appears down here. And it puts it over here. So now I have destination delay. I have 4 variables, 314 observations. And if I click on this, then I can see the view of it. And this is everything that I want to have. It's almost everything. It's just not, the columns are not in the right order. I'd really like to start with the destination name and then have everything else in the same order. I'd like to have it in that order. And this is gonna be the last thing that we're gonna do. So I want to change this a little bit. So I'm going to make iterative improvements on this. This is a very common way of doing this literate programming. I want to add to this a little bit. I want to say, then, what verb do you suppose I might use if I want to change the order in which the columns are shown? A little bit tricky. You're not arranging this way, you're arranging this way, but really it's just that old verb that we know, it's select. And really what I want to do is I want to have destination name first, and then I want to have everything else. So I could type, everything else, destination, carrier. This is long. And especially if I have like hundreds of columns, this is really long. It's hard. It's something that everyone needs to do. If I'm doing something that everyone probably needs to do at some point, and it's kind of a pain for me, what should that trigger? Should I power through it and go ahead and do all that typing? Somebody's probably already solved this. As a matter of fact, that's the whole point of RStudio and of Tidyverse. It's designed to make all the stuff that people must do easier. So where do you think I can find the possible solution to this? Tidyverse, tidyverse.org, absolutely. So I'm going to go to tidyverse.org. And again, I could do Tidyverse. And I know this has to do with select. So Tidyverse select. I'm going to click on that. Oh, names and types. Oh, that's a little bit too specific. I don't want to quite do that. I want to do. Here, I might go to tidyverse. Oh, come on. I'm going to go all the way to tidyverse. I'm going to show you another way to get to it too. Tidyverse, I know that select is part of dplyr. Oh, and then here's select. And then it gets me to this point. I also got to it directly the other way. So a couple of different ways of getting to it. Helpers. Often when you're trying to do something a little bit more complex, other than just like the basic select or the basic filter, there are going to be helper functions. So you look here for helpers, starts with, contains, matches, all of, maybe it's not here. Select. And I want to select everything. Oh, here it is. It's the first one. Everything matches all variables. Remember what I started to say here. I said, oh gosh, where am I now? What have I done? Okay, good. Yeah, here we go. I want to select destination name, and then I want everything else. So I want to select destination name, and then I want everything. Let's try that. I want destination name, and then I want everything. Let's try it. I'll run this code, and it makes destination delay over here. Let's just drop down. Look at this, destination name, and then it included all the rest of the columns. It included everything else. So we wrote some pretty complex code simply by speaking what we want to do. When we ran into any issues, we looked in tidyverse that told us a couple of things. Sometimes it told us just the syntax. Sometimes it gave us an idea of how to think about things. If it doesn't make sense, read more broadly in tidyverse, and especially if you can find a vignette, then you can read that. So a vignette. But even better, you can go and read the relevant chapter in R for Data Science, because that gives you the broadest context. So some homework for you all. You all have a very good start on learning the language. You've learned enough so you can do, I'd say about 60% of the most important things you need to do. To get to the rest and get up to 80% and a lot more, read R for Data Science. Work through the exercises and take your time in doing that. If you are unsure how to do something, search in tidyverse. See what you can find there. If you find yourself really struggling to figure out how to do something, look. Especially, again, if it's something that's common that many people you think might need to do, or that others, even just a few, might have done before, there's gonna almost certainly be a package that can do those things or a solution for you. Excellent. Final questions before we finish up. Excellent. Final thing to think about is I would like for you to think about what project you would like to apply this to. So think about what project, define it down as narrowly as possible. But in addition to doing additional reading and working on the practice of the R for Data Science, pretty soon, like in the next few days, start solving a problem. It could be a toy problem, it could be fun, you could do something with the flights information, any kind of analytical problem you can think of, but start the process of using this code now. That way you won't lose it. If you don't use it, it kind of goes away and you have to relearn it. You'll be able to relearn it faster the next time around, but start using it right away. Can I hand host over to one of the TAs? So you can stick around to answer questions my people have from Frist.
Yes. So, Adrian, are you going to stay around too?
Sure, I'll stick around for a while.
Okay, great. So either one of us is